To the narcissist I once loved. Anyone who has been in a relationship with a narcissist knows they will never give you closure. The only closure you're ever going to get is the closure you give yourself. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa. This video is my personal closure that I'm giving myself after escaping my narcissistic husband. He would never listen to me, constantly interrupted me, talked over me, would not stick to the topic I was trying to discuss with him, or simply walked away or stomped away to avoid talking altogether. In the 7 years I was with him, there was never a time that a conflict or disagreement was resolved. It simply got swept under the rug, and he expected me to never bring it up again. This is what I would say to my ex-narc if he could listen and hear. This is the closure I give myself. Now, if after listening to my story, you are inspired to share your own, but wish to do so anonymously, you can email me and I will be glad to share your story for you. I will leave my email address in the description box below. Dear Randy, and yes, that is his real name. I loved you. I really, honestly, and truly loved you from the very beginning. When I met you, I wasn't looking for anyone. I was single and happy, doing the work that I loved. My life had direction and purpose, and I was surrounded by friends and family that loved me. The only struggle I had was financial, a struggle many people experience. Other than that, I felt completely fulfilled in my life, as I have never really been a woman who needed a man in order to feel complete and whole. When you came into my life, it was like icing on the cake. I thought I had met my perfect partner, my soulmate, someone who had the same ideals, the same level of integrity and morality, someone on the same page as me. The fact that you were interested in spiritual pursuits, or it made it seem that way anyway, that made it all the better. And I believe this about you since we met at a spiritual center. I could see you had a deep sadness that I believed was because you were in a toxic relationship with your girlfriend. Of course, you told me this, and not only that, you had long ago told everyone around you that you were miserable and only staying in this relationship because of the son that you shared. Others believed this too, so I didn't have to just take your word for it, since you had been speaking badly of her to other people that I knew for years prior to meeting me. I felt sorry for you, and because I loved you, I wanted to save you. I wanted to ease your pain and show you what true love felt like. You told me you were selling your home and moving to another state, leaving the toxic girlfriend behind. I believed you were already out of the relationship with her emotionally and just going through the moving out process. The first time you kissed me, you told me you loved me, and it felt like a dream come true. My romantic nature made this seem like destiny, a true fairy tale. I told you right then and there I would never be a side chick, and therefore told you I would not be intimate with you until you had completely left your current relationship. When you readily agreed to this, I thought, wow, you are such a gentleman. I had no idea that was your way of not telling me immediately that you were completely impotent and had been for years prior to meeting me. Of course, this confused me later when I didn't understand what was wrong. Of course, you blamed your erectile dysfunction on health issues that you said were brought on by living with your toxic, now ex-girlfriend. You promised you would seek treatment and told me to be patient. I was patient for 7 years. When you finally tried medication for ED after 7 years, it didn't work. Of course, by then, I really no longer cared. I moved with you to a state and a town I'd never even visited before. You knew I had no job waiting for me, but told me not to worry because you would take care of me. I believed you. I enjoyed not having to worry about finances and delighted in doing everything I could to be the perfect girlfriend and later the perfect wife. I loved caring for you, cooking for you, learning how to cook even better in order to provide you with healthy and tasty meals. I never minded cleaning the house, doing the laundry, or helping you with whatever you needed. I prided myself in keeping a clean, neat, and inviting home. When your feet hurt, I never complained, nor did I mind getting up in the middle of the night to rub your feet or soothe you in some way. Since I didn't have to get up early for work, the interrupted sleep didn't faze me. It seemed perfect for a while, you handling the financial end of things and me taking care of you and creating a happy home. I put my career dreams and goals aside and instead focused all of my time and energy on you, and I did this willingly. When you asked me to marry you, I was so happy. I thought you truly loved me and that you were fully committed to me and to our relationship. But all that changed so quickly. Within the first few months of marriage, you said to me after a disagreement, "Why don't you just get the fuck out of here?" You said this to me more times than I can count. Every time you were angry at me, even though I begged you not to threaten the relationship just because you were mad. In hindsight, I believe my begging simply made you want to threaten me with abandonment even more. And of course you blamed me for feeling insecure because of the fact that I am an adopted child. Never before had anyone tried to make me feel unloved and unwanted because I was adopted. I treated your son with the same love and care I gave my own children. I couldn't understand why he liked me in the beginning and then seemed to hate me. Of course, now I know that you played me and him against one another to create conflict and drama. Even still, I persevered and continued showing your son love and kindness. When this eventually paid off and we were getting along again together, I was so happy that I never gave up on my stepson. I didn't realize at the time that you couldn't stand that we got along, laughing and joking around together, and you did your best to once again turn him against me. As for my own children, you made almost every visit with them tense. You made sure they didn't feel at home and criticized them every chance you got. You set them down for a lecture about making up their beds while your own son rarely made up his own bed. They never even lived with us, but you couldn't even be nice to them when they visited. You even screamed at me for burning some wood, and you did this in front of my son, your son, and 3 other people. Even when your own son stood up for me, saying it was no big deal since it was wood he had brought home from school and could get more, you didn't stop raging. Everyone there thought your reaction was crazy and over the top and told me so. But you thought you were completely justified. You wanted to make me miserable when I left town to visit my own children. Of course, at the time, I didn't know you were purposely doing this in an attempt to ruin my time with my kids. Less than 2 hours before going to the airport, you started an argument with me one time about my cell phone. I couldn't understand why you would want me to leave town without my cell phone and tried unsuccessfully to get you to understand. Even when I finally broke into tears out of frustration, not understanding why you would want me without a way to call anyone, including you, you smirked at me and you laughed at my tears. You mocked my pain and told me I was addicted to my phone. Every attempt I made to call you once I arrived at my destination to resolve this conflict, you refused to talk to me. You hung up on me, and you even posted our disagreement on social media, making fun of me. At the time, I continued to beg you to speak to me, and I told you that what you were doing was irreparable damage to our relationship, but you never cared, and you never removed the Facebook post. I foolishly thought that I could somehow change your behavior by loving you harder, by dropping the subject and moving past all the ways you insulted me, invalidated me, and criticized me. This never worked, and I became sadder and sadder in the relationship. I became depressed and anxious, wondering when you would snap at me again. I lost interest in doing the things I once loved. My full focus became How do I fix this? You tried to make me think everything was my fault and that I needed professional help. So I went to a counselor. I asked you to go as well, but of course you refused. You told me nothing was wrong with you, that you hadn't changed, it was me that had changed, and that I needed help. The first counselor I saw was shocked by what I told her in regards to our relationship and told me to get out. This was the second time I heard terms like gaslighting, blame shifting, triangulation, and narcissism. The first person I heard use these terms in regards to you was your son's mother, the girlfriend before me. Of course, I didn't want to hear this, and I never saw that counselor again. I booked an appointment with a new counselor and was told exactly the same thing. This counselor also stressed that you would never change. But I didn't take her advice to leave either. I was determined to fix this relationship. I was determined to make this marriage work. I swore to myself and others I would not give up and I would never divorce you. I tried to calmly talk to you and express my concerns. You never seemed to understand or even care. You claimed I was jealous and wanted to erase your past relationships simply because I objected to the constant references to your exes, including an hour-long rant on Christmas Day about how you wanted to get even with your second wife. You called me jealous and insecure because I objected to you keeping nude photos of your ex that I came across in our bedroom. And after that, you finally told me I could burn them in the fire pit, which I did. Then you later accused me of destroying your stuff. I could have destroyed them when I found them, Randy, but I didn't. Not until you told me to. I was never jealous of your exes or your past relationships. I simply felt disrespected by you with your constant references to them. I now know that you held onto these items to prove to yourself and others that once you had been a man who could get an erection, and you knew those days were long gone and would never be again. Of course, you never appreciated the fact that you had a much younger, attractive wife who was willing to give up ever having a normal sex life. You couldn't see or feel how much I loved you, despite my disappointment and unfulfillment in our intimate life. My energy and sense of well-being was at an all-time low. I was miserable. Every day felt like a day I was just trying to get through, just trying to survive. You scolded me for the changes you saw in me, constantly telling me I wasn't the girl you met. And you were right, I did change. I went from an optimistic, happy, and energetic person to someone I no longer recognized. I went from starting each day by going running to barely having enough energy to teach a couple of yoga classes a week. My appetite decreased to the point that I often went all day without eating, and you didn't notice. I got thinner and thinner to the point of friends and family becoming concerned with my weight. I had become so devalued by you that you never noticed this. I learned to hide my pain and emotions so I wouldn't be blamed by you, so I wouldn't be ridiculed by you, and I wouldn't be told by you that I was too sensitive. I started smoking frequently as a way to deal with the stress and anxiety I felt constantly. I knew it was unhealthy, but I didn't care. I went to bed most nights wishing I would never wake up. I literally prayed to God to please let me die in my sleep. I knew I was on my own emotionally and could not rely on you for support. I turned back to what had gotten me through tough times in the past and began to pursue my spiritual path again. I tried to include you, but you showed little to no interest and often even challenged me about what I was doing. I asked you to attend more than one retreat with me, and you refused. I asked you many times to attend a yoga class that I taught, but you refused. Even though I had shown and given support to everything you did, you gave little to no support for what I did. Yes, you paid for many things, and in the beginning, you were extremely generous with money. Once we were married, though, you complained about giving me money and made me not even want to ask. So I got a job. A year later, I got a better job, making double the money. I paid for the majority of my personal needs, including medical, for myself. Meanwhile, you made sure you had health coverage, even supplemental coverage on top of that. After I lost my job, I had no health coverage, and you didn't care. What kind of husband gets health insurance for himself but not his wife? I struggled to pay my personal bills with the unemployment I received, and when it ran out, I asked you for $500. Your response, I don't have $500. Yet less than 3 weeks later, you purchased a brand new snowblower costing way over that amount. The summer before I left, you spent hours screaming at me outside for all the neighbors to hear simply because I stood up for your son to the girl who was jerking him around. I stood up for him because I knew you never would. And even though I never raised my voice to her, you screamed at me, you yelled at me, you threatened to kick me out right then and there, and you threatened to divorce me. All because I stood up for my stepson. And even as I cried and begged you to please stop, you continued and told me you felt no empathy for me at all. And I could see that was true. Our neighbors heard this, though I certainly won't tell you which ones. They contacted me to see if I was okay, and they told me that they had considered calling the police. When I tried talking to you later after you had calmed down, and told you that the words you said to me were harsh, to say the very least, your response was, harsh? You think that was harsh? You haven't seen harsh. Even through this mess, I still thought I could fix this, crazy as that was in hindsight. A month after this, I had returned from a visit with my children, and you screamed at me for more than 6 hours shortly after picking me up from the airport, all because my daughter was again seeing a guy that you didn't like, and because I didn't tell you of this immediately, but instead waited until I returned home. You yelled at me even further. I was exhausted from my trip. I wanted to sleep, but you continued into the night, only settling down after you satisfied yourself by sending a nasty text message to my daughter in the middle of the night. You knew she would be visiting us in 2 weeks, but refused to talk to her and apologize for the text that you sent. Upon her arrival, she attempted to calmly talk to you about what had happened, about that text message, and you responded by exploding with anger and rage against her, cursing her and calling her names. What you didn't realize is this was all recorded on video and became useful in proving your explosive and highly abusive behavior later. The rest of the week while my daughter was there, you not only refused to make things right with her, you childishly left the room whenever she entered the room. During this same time, you attacked a longtime friend of mine and her husband by filing a false police report. I knew there was no coming back from this because you always thought you were right about everything. My efforts to resolve this were all in vain. You refused to even attempt to make things right with my daughter, even though I did my best to make things right with your son after the interaction with his girlfriend, and I never screamed at her or told her to get out the way you did with my daughter. You did everything you could to invalidate and devalue me further. You allowed your son's friend to move in with us, and though I didn't mind at the time, you never asked me if I was okay with it. You allowed him to bring a dog into the house that tore things up and crapped on the floor, yet you had vehemently objected to my having a dog. You allowed him to leave his room in a mess, never making his bed, and you even did his laundry for him. even though you lectured my children on these very things. You badmouthed me to this kid and to so many others. What you didn't know is the very people you thought were your friends and on your side told me everything you said. So I started planning my escape. I had seen and experienced your rages, and so I never told you of my plans. But somehow I still loved you and was trying to find a reason to stay. On New Year's Eve last year, you chose to watch an entire TV series I wasn't interested in rather than spend that time with me. I decided I would no longer beg for your attention or your affection. We traveled to Arizona in January of 2020 for a vacation and for my retreat. And while I was at my retreat, you called and screamed at me over the phone for more than 3 hours straight. My attempts to calm you down failed miserably. Finally, I faked crying, and of course, just as I thought, that got you off the phone. In your eyes, mission accomplished. A few days later, when you picked me up to take me to a nice resort, you acted like you didn't understand why I was so irritable with you. When I reminded you of the phone call, your response was, "So now you're bringing up the past." Yes, the past from 3 days ago. When I told you no one had ever treated me the way you had, no one had ever screamed at me the way you have done on multiple occasions, your response was, "Maybe someone should have." Somehow, I was still determined to try, and I told you the truth, that I still loved you. For a moment, you gave me hope. You promised to not yell at me anymore. You promised to not threaten to kick me out anymore. And for the first and only time in our entire relationship, you said, "I'm going to be a better husband to you." My love for you was still so strong that I believed you. For a moment, I thought maybe this relationship could be saved. That quickly faded as I saw no change in your behavior. I never saw any attempt on your part to become a better husband. When I left in February of 2020 and kissed you goodbye at the airport, I was still hoping that I could return. Yes, I had a plan of escape and I had consulted with an attorney, but I held on to a thin strand of hope that somehow this would be resolved, that my absence would make your heart grow fonder. When the world shut down shortly thereafter, I started to see that would never happen. You knew I had little money. You only gave me $40 when I left, yet you never asked if I needed money, and you balked when I finally asked you for $100. I survived on the stimulus check and the support of my own children and their friends, who couldn't understand why my wealthy husband wasn't helping me and showed little concern for my well-being. When my son suffered a tragic loss of someone he dearly loved, you chastised me because for a moment I forgot how heartless that you are and leaned on you for emotional support as I cried uncontrollably to you over the phone. I knew in that moment you wouldn't care if I died. Your only concern would be to seek sympathy for others and finding someone else to take my place so you could repeat your pattern of your fake facade followed by abuse. In the days following my departure, you discovered there was a gun missing from our home. Immediately, my thought was, what gun? And why did I not know there was a loaded handgun in our bedroom just a few feet away from where I slept? Even more troubling was your refusal to change the locks immediately, especially after telling me that days later you had discovered the house key that opened all the doors to the house was missing as well. Even more troubling still was the man that you brought into our home, without asking me, of course, since, my opinion never mattered, turned out to be a convicted felon whom you think took the gun. So instead of changing the locks, You tried to set this man up to come to the house so you could demand your gun and shoot him if he refused. You even told me you were thinking of going to his house and doing exactly the same. When I expressed concern that this was actually murder, you laughed at me and you called my fears insecure. Now I was really fearful about returning, but I still loved you. Then our anniversary came around, and for the first time ever, there was no post celebrating this on Facebook from you. Your call to me that day seemed shallow and insincere as you wished me a happy anniversary. 2 weeks later, you called me regarding something I posted online that you agreed with, but somehow ended up once again screaming at me over the phone. This time I hung up on you, and you never called back. I then contacted the attorney and started divorce proceedings. I still loved you at this point, but I knew I couldn't return. All I'd be coming back to was more abuse from you. You had literally given me no choice but to stay gone. Upon receiving divorce papers, rather than contacting me, you turned off my phone and called others to convey messages to me. Of course, I anticipated this and had already secured a new phone. You then immediately set up an online dating profile, or profiles rather, representing yourself as divorced when you were not. You played the victim and smeared me to others, saying I left you for another man. Projection as usual. I've never jumped from relationship to relationship or overlapped relationships. Randy, that is what you do. It is your pattern. It's your ability, or rather your inability, to be by yourself and take the time to heal. You need someone, not for love, just for the constant attention you crave. And then you did the unthinkable, and this action killed every ounce of love I ever felt for you, and I saw you clearly for the monster you are. You destroyed not only the portraits of me and my children hanging on the walls, you also destroyed my beloved father's urn and ashes therein. I then knew you were completely evil, a truly vile creature. Someone who constantly stated, "I'm not a vindictive person. I don't believe in tit for tat." Someone who has professed to believe in karma. Really? What kind of karma do you think you've brought upon yourself? Do you really think any sane person will think this action was warranted? I know you think I deserve it, or that by my serving papers on you for divorce that somehow justified what you did, but no one else thinks this way, Randy, and the judge didn't think that way either, did he, when he found you guilty? You said on many occasions that you were more psychic than me and more psychic than I'll ever know. Well, I guess you overestimated yourself there, and I never claimed to be psychic. Randy, you are mentally and emotionally unstable. You are demanding and controlling. You are verbally, mentally, emotionally, and financially abusive. You are in every single way a narcissist, and you will never change. I, on the other hand, am an empath stronger than you could ever imagine. After leaving the home with you, I soon regained my strength. I stopped unhealthy habits I picked up while dealing with you, such as smoking. I start my mornings running again. My days are filled with purpose, and I'm surrounded by those who love me. My back doesn't ache anymore, and I sleep soundly throughout the night, no longer hyper-vigilant and consumed with anxiety. I love my life now, and I did it on my own without the need to seek out a new relationship to pacify a fear of being alone. While you were frantically seeking a new source of supply, I was turning down offers, and this fact makes me laugh. I now see you as the pathetic creature you are. I don't keep up with your life, and I blocked you on social media the day the papers were served to you. I know that you may try to appear happy with your life, especially to others, especially now that I'm gone. But you're not happy. You've never been happy. You never will be happy. And because I no longer care, I'm free. You were merely a blip in the story of my life. Good riddance.